Hi guys, Brendan Little here from your land partner, coming to you today for your next instalment of 100 in 100. Following the appraisal mini-series theme today, as we've discussed in previous sessions, we start the appraisal process and go through checklists and look at opportunities basically to find a reason not to do them. The appraisal process is designed to ensure that you are moving forward and spending the right amount of time, money, effort, energy on projects that have got a good chance of materializing. And we put certain things in place where we are looking for certain information that will aid us in making that decision. So following on through the initial assessment, today's topic is access. And to be honest, during the appraisal process, there aren't many things that will necessarily smack you in the face and say, no, this is a complete red light. And there's no point moving forward. Obviously, there are some reasons, but generally speaking, in early stages of the appraisal, certainly in the initial assessment, a lot of what we're coming up against are often maybes, amber lights, where we've got to either go back to the vendor and sort of assess whether they have any more information about certain things, or go and find out the information ourselves. But access can be a real one where it's just a pure and simple red light. And with a couple of hours or an hour or two of research, or getting on the phone to one of your professionals, a planning consultant or someone like that, may be able to help you looking at a deal and going, yeah, in terms of, yes, it might be physically possible to build one house or 100 houses or however many it be, but there's going to be a sticking point in terms of access, in which point, you haven't expelled too much money, energy, time in finding that, getting to that decision. So then you move on. So I want to discuss that with you really, and what we look out for typically when we're assessing the access on a potential deal. So up to this point with a potential opportunity, we've probably done some high level numbers because it doesn't take that long to do, and we'd rather assess the kind of expectations of the owner in terms of possible land values, with the caveat that obviously we've got to go away, we've got to do more research in terms of looking at planning potential, constraints to development and things like that, and obviously access being one of them. So we've got to that stage, and now we're looking into access. Now, where you find out about information on access can vary depending on the area that you are in. A lot of local authorities provide guidance through things like design guides or supplementary documentation on their website that may have details of how they view access provision and things like parking requirements and sufficient visibility displays, things like that. Another document which is useful is called the Manual for Streets. It's a cover-all document. It's got lots of information about all kinds of things related to roads and streets, pavements, things like that, highways, etc. But it does have information in there specifically, which is of interest to us as developers in terms of visibility displays, and that's one of the things I want to concentrate on during this session. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen, an image, and then I'm going to attempt to do a little bit of an example of just how you can get this wrong or overlook something that can have a detrimental effect moving a project forward in terms of viability. So I want to cover off visibility displays. I'm going to share with you a slide from one of our courses that we used to run a couple of years ago called the Development Appraisal Masterclass. It was a 3-day program. Obviously, that was run through our company, Property Developers Academy. We no longer run any courses like that anymore, but I've still got all the information. And a lot of what we're sharing with you through 100 and 100 is information that we've shared previously on these types of courses. So just going to share my screen, so just bear with me. Desktop number 2. Okay, so hopefully you can see this on your screen. Initial assessment checklist, so as we're going through it. So this is just displaying a visibility splay. And what we mean by visibility splay is that if you're adding additional dwellings or changing the use of something where you may be changing vehicular movements, then you've got to ensure, and the local authority will tell you effectively, whether it's the current access or a newly created access that you're proposing will be sufficient to serve the new development and also provide a safe access onto existing highways. So in this example, we've got an existing highway here, and we've got a road coming off of it. And the measurement in terms of sufficient visibility display is taken back from the curb. I think it's 2 meters. And then you've got a distance creating a splay left and a distance creating a splay right. Now the Y distance in this image will be dependent on the road designation, so the road designation and the speed limit. So for example, if it's a 30-mile-an-hour residential road, then in a lot of cases the visibility display, the length of this line, the line to the left and the right, could be 43 meters, I think it is. It might be more than that. Forgive me for the exact details, but it just gives you an idea of the kind of length of that to create that visibility display. Now, as you can see in the image, that visibility display in this example crosses over a piece of land on the left and a piece of land on the right. Now, if you don't own any of that land where a visibility display crosses over, then that could cause you quite an issue in terms of it could be a financial payment to whoever owns it, or it certainly could derail a project if you spent a lot of money going through the process, even to the point of getting planning permission. Because what we're seeing a lot of, it used to come up in things like pre-apps and things like that, but what we're seeing a lot of now, and it also used to be reasons for refusal, but what we're seeing a lot of now is access is being added to a consent as a condition. So you could receive your application consent through and you've got consent, fantastic, but don't pop the cork there, because the condition could be subject to achieving safe access. And if that access then crosses over some land that you don't own, or something that you cannot move, for example, trees with TPOs, or buildings or substations or anything like that, then you effectively, you've got a piece of paper that says you possibly could build, but you won't be able to fulfill the conditions attached to the consent. So these kind of images, if you Google visibility display, you'll come up with these images. As I said, they're displayed in the manual for streets. Can be published in your local authority documentation, design guides, things like that as well. But the thing to really kind of remember with regards to access is that even if you are adding one house, this isn't applicable just to multi-unit developments where you're creating a significant increase in vehicular movements, for example. If you're adding one house, it still comes into effect. So adding a house to the end of the terrace, or in a back garden, or what have you, you can move forward quite a way with it and then get derailed by access. So it's a really important point to try and find out as early as possible, really, which is why we have it in our initial assessment. And if we get the green light, fantastic, we move past it. But if it's a red light or an amber light, then we need to either look into it in more detail, or we just move on to the next one in our pipeline. Now, some local authorities, certainly authorities where we're working in our areas, some of them offer highways pre-apps on their own. So rather than going through the pre-application process straight away in terms of development, and obviously as part of that they would contact highways to get their comment, some local authorities do highways pre-apps. Some of them are free, certainly in the local authorities that we're working in are free, and you can get some useful advice. So you can send some details to them in terms of, you know, you're looking to develop here. What's their thoughts from a highways perspective? So you can get that early input, you know, with a relatively low amount of investment in terms of time and money. Further to that, obviously, in terms of your consultants and professionals, then a planning consultant should steer you in the right direction with regards to this. I'd say architects should, but not all of them do. We've got examples, not of our own, but certainly of other people that we know that have wasted thousands of pounds on architects' drawings to find out that they couldn't get access because TPOs were in the way of the newly created access. So the architect hasn't necessarily done, well, not necessarily, he's done exactly what he was asked to do, but not really gone you know, that extra mile to find out any information before that. So, you know, a highways consultant, of which I'm sure there are some part of the house building business community. I know certainly of one. So it's reaching out to people like that, and they're the kind of professionals that you, specialist professionals that you need on your development team. Certainly if you're making a move from investment to development, you wouldn't necessarily have that kind of person or that professional within your contacts as an investor, but you certainly do as a developer. Now, access and finding the issues within access doesn't necessarily mean no, but it certainly highlights an area of risk. And it's then about determining how that risk can be mitigated. So can it be mitigated in the deal structure in terms of maybe purchasing other land, or long leases of other land in perpetuity to maintain that you've got control over access, things like that. But can it affect the design? Can it, obviously it can completely derail a project, but it can also affect the design in terms of what you can and can't build. For example, if you were looking to build, you know, right on a corner of something, and then further development or dwellings further into the plot, you may do your appraisal, do a deal based on the land value, say 4 units, shake hands, you know, exchange contracts, etc. Then find that you can't actually build 4, you can only build 3 because the one that you've put on the front is in the way of your visibility display. So it's things like that. So it could cost you a unit, and that could basically cost you your profit margin on development. But it could also increase costs, you know, because it's not just about safe access for the users of any of the properties, but you've got things like emergency services, refuge, but certainly emergency services. If you've got things like fire, then you might, if you can't necessarily get access for fire engines into a development, then you may, you know, fire regs and fire consultants as part of your planning application will, and health and safety will put conditions in place to put other mitigation in place in your development, which could cost you more. So I'll give you an example. I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and I'm going to try and share a whiteboard. Please forgive my drawing on here. It's much easier to draw on a physical whiteboard. Much more difficult, I find, that on one of these. But we've had countless experiences of this, and sometimes it's not that a red light in terms of you either don't own that piece of land or something. You may come up against a situation where it's just cost prohibitive to move something that's in the way. So I want to share an example with you. So we've got a existing road here. This was a contact of ours that came to us, local to us, that was just about to exchange on this this deal, and wanted to get our advice in terms of planning. So we've got an existing road here, so it's an existing junction. We've got a neighbouring property on the left, and then we've got the property that was on the market, I believe, that was a refurb, but with the purchase price as it was, a refurb to a good standard to sell on its own, there just wasn't enough value in it at all. However, the kind of opportunity that this person saw was within the grounds of this property, just here, a potential building plot. So effectively, high level, you go, I'm going to buy this house, this dwelling, existing dwelling. I'm going to do it up, and we're pretty much cost neutral, which means I've got a free plot, fantastic, out of it to build a new dwelling. We build that, we sell that, we make a couple of £100,000 worth of profit. Fantastic in principle. So we want to build a new dwelling just in that bit there. You'd think on the face of it, not a problem at all. You know, there's already an existing road that's, this is a cul-de-sac, by the way, and it's only feeding these 2 dwellings because it's a bit rural. So you'd think, oh, we're only adding 1 dwelling. So we're not really increasing the traffic movements that much. But as I said before, it is applicable to single dwellings as well as multi-unit developments. Now, what we found out when we went through our IA checklist, this took us about half an hour. Obviously, we're fairly experienced in this. For those that are less experienced, it might take you a little bit longer. But for what we found out when we had a brief look at it, was we look at our visit place, we come back 2 meters, we draw a line this way, we draw the required line based on the road designation and the speed limit, etc., both ways. And let's forget about the left-hand side. Put a spotlight. Let's forget about this for the moment. Obviously, in this example, in the drawing, that line is crossing across land that we don't own, so that's a separate issue. But the main issue that we found first was, as you can see on the right-hand side, the line crosses through a little square box there, and that was an electrical substation. Now, obviously, that can be moved. So at this stage, we think, okay, well, you know, we could mitigate it, we could get around it. There'll be a significant cost to moving it, in which we need to factor in our appraisal and corresponding land value. And we potentially could sort out this issue as well by talking to the neighbour, etc. But let's concentrate on this issue. Well, you know, moving a substation is not cheap. So in actual fact, the cost of moving this further down, which could have been done, was just cost prohibitive. It made building this new dwelling and the couple of £100,000 that we were going to make just not possible, really. So there's a good example there of, you know, somebody in the know just taking the look at something and then preventing somebody from exchanging on a deal that actually they probably would have lost money on. And we've got countless examples of this, you know. So one of the things I would suggest is any bounding properties to a development site that you're looking at, download the land registry on all of them to understand if there's any restrictive covenants, who owns parts of any land that might be coming to your visibility display and potential access. So there's lots of things that you can do, but it's often you get it to a certain point and you're going to need some specialist advice from a highways consultant, planning consultant, development consultant that's been through this and knows what they're talking about. Now, this can also come into, let's get rid of this. Clear all drawings and stop. This can also come into effect and be relevant even if you are changing the use of something. So not necessarily building new, or you could be converting something into, you know, a commercial to residential, or you could changing the use of something. And it does come into effect because obviously if you're changing the use, you might be changing the types of vehicular movements or increasing the vehicular movements in some regard, depending on the use of that building, for example. But that can also work in your favour. So it's about looking at previous and current use of the property or the land that you're dealing with. We have another example previously where we were looking at a site, and it was I think it was a new build site for something like 18 dwellings or something like that. But the previous use was a care home, and long story short, there was enough vehicular movement of its previous use. It had been demolished when we were looking at it. So the previous use was a care home, and it had enough vehicular movements that we weren't actually increasing any vehicular movements further. So we were fairly comfortable with moving forward on that basis. So a bit of a whistle-stop tour really of access. There's lots of things that can crop up, but visibility displays is vital, and it's often based on predetermined information that you can find out that is published, or you need to get on the phone or email somebody to help you out to find the relevant information. So that's been your look into access for 100 in 100 today. And we look forward to joining you again soon. Thanks very much.